I'm Terry Strongman, TONEFREAK bass experience guy. Now, I'm going to talk about playing the bass. I'm going to talk about improvising. Bass improvisation. It's going to be a different point of view than you will find probably anywhere else you're on YouTube, or maybe anywhere else at all. So stick with me, and I'm going to smoke a little weed, and I'm going to talk about it. Right now, while I do this, I have something for you to do before we get started here. If you haven't subscribed to this channel yet, now's your chance, right now. Go ahead and do that. That way, at the same time, you can also activate the notification bell feature to be apprised of my new uploads. You can go ahead and do those right now. Got it? All right. Next thing. Right now, and just look down below this media player window, and you'll see a thumb up icon. Click on it. Share the joy of the channel with others. A little further down in the video description area, you will find a donation by PayPal information. Go ahead and arrange to do that too. I'm poor. And this channel could use your support. Okay. Now, improvising on the bass. Well, I do a lot of that. Excuse me. I decided recently to look up videos on bass improvising here on YouTube. There aren't a lot. Oh, there are examples of somebody improvising on a bass. But talk about how that is done, not much. No. And I found something very curious about examples of improvising. And it's the same thing I found about talking about improvising. Like, here's how you do it. Here's how you learn to do it. Here's how you get better. Just like in my immediately previous upload, I guess yesterday, or maybe the day, or well, yeah, it was yesterday, I pointed out something about playing the bass and listening to the bass, especially when it has to do with improvisation. I pointed out that almost all bass playing in the world, or at least Western culture, and especially the rock and roll thing, it's all pretty much the same thing over and over and over. The same approach, the same idea about what it means to play the bass. Well, when it comes to videos that give, like a 3-minute bass improvisation session, or talk about improvising, the same thing applies. It's like, here's how you improvise. Here's what it's like when it's being done. And it's just all variations of the same damn thing. Which, just like in the first case, the video from yesterday, it disappoints me. Disappoints me. Well, I'm going to give you a different point of view about improvising. And I think you might benefit from this. If you have a little lack of confidence about improvising, or you don't find yourself very good at it, this may come as encouragement to you. Like, this is a good thing compared to the other 99% of the information and examples of doing the damn thing, improvising on your bass. So, let's get started here. I'm not quite ready. And you, if you have to piss or get a drink, something like that, look for your cigarettes. Now's your chance for those. Maybe you know the old saying, which runs as follows. As all men know, if you don't cough, you don't get off. So let's see if I can cough again. Here we go. No, I guess I need to reload, but I'm not going to. I've taken up too much of your time already. Hopefully you'll stick with me through this, because this is to be helpful for you. This has nothing to do with me blowing my own horn at all. All right? I want you to get two things out of this. First, I want you to maybe apply what I'm saying to your bass improvisation. What was the other thing? I don't know. I forget. I wonder why. Oh, I want you to think a little bit more broadly. Just like in the prior video about playing and listening to bass. This has to do with developing your improvisational skills, technique, point of view. Okay? Getting you to think about something different. All right. Just start. Where do I begin? Well, where do you begin? With improvising. In general, like over the long picture of your development as a bassist. Where do you start? If you want to be an improviser. Instead of learning scales and knowing which ones to fit in where, any of that kind of formula stuff, I want you to think like this. Think like you don't even know how to play the bass to start. Like you just went out and you bought a cheap one somewhere, $40. You don't know how to play the damn thing. You don't know anything about it. You don't even know that in about 3 days, if you play around with it for about 3 days straight, maybe even 3 hours, you're going to get blisters on your fingers and they're really going to hurt. You don't even know that's going to happen yet. You don't know. You're that new. But if you're not really that new at playing the bass, then pretend you are. Okay? Because that's the starting. Okay? That's the starting. You know nothing about music theory? Nothing. Nothing. Okay? You know what kind of things you like to hear. And you might have some idea, even if you're coming into this with some objectives, goals, right? What you want to do. You might even have an idea of a bass line or a song, something like that, you know. A bass line, let's just keep it at that because we're talking about your part, the bass, even if we're talking about a song. You might have some bass line that you have thought about or imagined, but you've never heard it. But you'd like it to exist. You'd like to hear it. You'd like to hear that. So you set yourself right away to think, all right, I don't know shit about this instrument. I certainly don't know anything about playing what I hear in my head that I would like to hear someday, but never have. It may be something simple. Hopefully it is. Hopefully it's not, you know, like it's just some blues-based rock and roll or something like that. You have no clue how to do that. but you're going to do it. You're going to create that baseline. You might actually have, as you're learning it, you might actually, as time goes on and you figure out how to do it, how to at least make one note out of that thing, right? To hit one of the notes, it may develop into an actual pattern, a song, the three main parts of a song, right? The verses, the chorus, and a bridge. Then you might have an intro, and you might have an ending. All right. Here's the point. Here's the objective. You don't know what your bass can do. You know what other people do, but you don't know how to do any of it. But you have something in mind. This is a great way to start into this, guys. Your task, you put yourself to the task. Two things that you put yourself to right away is you want to learn, you want to figure out what all kinds of things you can do with this bass. What kind of different sounds can it make? How many different ways to get a sound out of it are there? Can you come up with? Right? Now you know what everybody else is doing. Pretty much the same thing as everybody else. But you don't have the skill, the technique, the technical skills to do that right now. But what you can do is make sounds out with it. And you're curious to see what it can do. I'm recommending this. That's one of your objectives right away. That's one of your two initial objectives. See what kind of sounds you can make out of that thing with that thing. Learn to know your bass. Develop a relationship with it. Don't go at it like you're going to just do what everybody else does and thump out note sequences. Or slop them out. Start with the idea that you want to learn what all kinds of sounds this thing can make. Some sounds which will be notes. The other objective, immediate objective, is to start figuring out while you're learning what kinds of sounds this thing makes, and what this string sounds like when you press on this fret. Well, first of all, it's going to be even like, how do you press on a fret and have an actual clear tone? Well, you get past that, okay, you're starting to get okay with that. Your second objective here is to gear, do what you're doing with the first objective for its own purposes, right? But then another purpose is to work toward the second objective, and that's to learn to play that thing that you want to hear, which is note sequences. All right. Well, first, you have it in mind that you're just gonna make noise with this thing. You're gonna see what can be done. Okay? What it can do. And now you know what you want to do. You want to be able to play this thing you hear in your head, this song, this bass line. Okay? So you figure it out. You figure it out. In the process of finding the right strings and the right frets to be able to plunk out the sequence of notes that you hear in your head. Now you kind of have to learn how the strings relate to one another. You may discover that, well, if you press on fret on, let's say, the E string, and then you move up the neck, like toward higher notes, 2 frets, and then jump up 2 strings, and play them both at the same time, it's the same note. It's an octave. It's an eighth. An eighth interval. We got 8 notes, right? do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. And you notice there's do at the beginning and do at the end, and that second do is 8 steps higher than the first do, but they're both do. That's an octave. You figure that out. Or you figure out another way to get an octave. But you can't hit both of those at the same time. But wait, one's an open string and the other one's fretted. Yes, you can. Well, you figure this out. You just keep seeing what it can do and how it works. You'll discover things like this. Well, that's going to help you reach this second objective, too. And in the process of figuring that out, you will be learning something about how the strings relate to one another, including how to tune it, which has to do with how the strings relate to one another, unless you're using some tuning instrument, tuning tool that tells you when you're in tune, which I say is cheating. It's okay for on stage and you want to get tuned up quick and you can't hear, or you want to do it quiet and you have no sound, but you ought to learn to tune the damn thing by ear, by simply, like, never mind. I hope you get the point. I want to continue with what I'm trying to say. And you work at this until you can play that song. And then you will have created a bass line that works into a song. Later on in your life, you get other people to play with, guitar, drums, whatever, You can have them create their parts for it. And you got a song. And you have a band. And if you actually play all this in front of somebody else and you might get $1 for doing it, well, by God, you're in a band that plays gigs. In other words, you're a real musician. You're a professional now because it's your profession if you do it regularly now, right? In other words, you're an active band. You're playing out. You're playing on stage. You're playing in front of an audience. Maybe you just have one song. Your first objective, once again, is figure out what you can do with this thing and how it's put together, how the strings work, how the neck goes. I don't mean master it all. I mean, just get the basic things down. Nobody has to tell you anything. You don't need a book. You don't need a video. You don't need instruction of any kind. You start getting music instruction or bass instruction, and you're going to end up with a very narrow point of view like most other people. And maybe that some of them never had instruction either. They taught themselves, but they're listening to everybody else in order to do that. I'm not telling you to listen to anybody. It's your bass. You figure it out. And you figure out how to play this bass line you hear in your head that nobody else seems to be knowing. Right? Not exactly that one. All right. This is going to put you in a good position to move into improvising very quickly and with an open mind about what it is. Well, now you can play this song that you created. You wrote it. First thing you did when you bought that $40 bass. Well, one of the two first things you started to do was write a song. But you knew nothing about it, how to do that. But you figure it out. Just finding on the neck, on the fretboard, which string and which frets to use. Note by note, you found them. Well, then you've come up with ways to get from one note to the other the most easy way. Right? Now, later on, you might start taking lessons, and you'll learn about hand positions. Well, you don't need to learn about hand positions. Not really. You do it however is the most comfortable for you. If you want to play one note and then you want to play another note, and you find that it could involve going from here on the neck all the way up to here to get to that next note. But if you use a different combination of strings, and instead of going up here, you go just, like to a higher string, same basic hand position, You're figuring it out. There's nothing more to it. All right? You're improvising. You do enough of this, and you know, if you get kind of a little better at one aspect of it, then emphasize practicing some other aspect of what you're doing that you're not so good at. And always practice. Always practice, regularly, like almost every day, okay? And remember, especially in the early phases of all of this, let's say you practice for 2 hours. At whatever skill level you are at the end of that 2 hours, you wait 2 days, and you practice for 2 more hours. Okay. You had 2 hours to get better 2 days ago. Now you have 2 hours to get better today. In between there's what, maybe 44 hours that you didn't play? Well, you're losing skill during that time. So every time you practice, not only emphasize the things you're not so good at, but also you have to practice long enough, at 2 days later now, long enough to get back to skill level that you ended with 2 days before, and then keep playing to improve from there. And bear in mind, when you're done that day, between then and the next time, you're going to lose some skill. So you're going to have to catch back up next time and go further. At least 50% of the work should be things you're not so good at. Those are the 2 rules for effective practice to actually get better. During all of this, you're going to become familiar with what each string and each fret, what note they produce. You'll get familiar with it. Hell, you had to hunt for the notes in that first song. You didn't know where they were on the bass. You didn't know how to produce. You had to hunt. So you probably had to play most of the pitch positions on the damn neck and figure out where to find that same pitch on some other string. I mean, you're just going to run into that. You're going to notice these things. And the more you keep noticing them, the more you'll be able to do them on purpose. But remember that first objective. Figuring out what all kinds of stuff you can do with this instrument, this thing called bass, right? There's a lot more you can do than just find a string and a fret under it and hit it and get a note, intentionally or unintentionally, that note. There's a lot more. Let me give you some examples. Remember, you don't know anything about playing the bass at first. You want to see what it can do. All right. So let's imagine you actually have a practice amp, a little combo thing. I was a preamp, amp, and speaker all in one. You'll know. Never mind. Right. So you can actually, like play plugged in. Okay. So you're not sure what to do. You know that you could use a pick. You know that you could use your fingers to make contact with the string, to create the impact with the string. Well, are those the only 2 things you could do? That you could use? Really? Are they? What about if you use a spoon, the back of a spoon, and you slap the strings? What about that? Probably not going to sound like a pick, and it's probably not going to sound like your fingers. It's something different. Or you could slide the back of the spoon on the string a little bit. How about the edge of the spoon? make that, like grindy sound. It goes fast and then goes slow. And if you have round strings, well, in other words, there are high and low spots in the strings, because it's a winding around the wire, around a string, like a coil, wrapped around. So you rub the edge of a spoon on it and it's going to go, Well, then you can flip the spoon over and so that, the two edges of the spoon are in contact with it rather than the back of the smooth surface. Now you have these two edges on it and you slide them on the string and you start to rock it back and forth as you move. Well, there's a different thing now. Right? Well, what if you do that while you're also sliding this finger on the string, the relevant string, up this direction while you're bringing the spoon down and rocking it toward that finger? What about that? Well, that's not in the book, is it? That's not on a YouTube video, is it? That's not in bass lessons, is it? But it is something that you can do with the bass. Now, you show me the rule that says that's not playing your bass. Show me the rule that says that doesn't count. Show me the rule that says, no, it's only pick or fingers. Show me that. And I'll shut up immediately. I'll delete this video. I'll shut down my channel. Promise. Show me the rule. Well, you're learning what things you can do with this instrument. You're learning what sounds it can make. Okay? All right. So, whoa. Hey, wait a minute. What if you crank it up all the way? The amp and the bass, right? You crank it up, and you stand right in front of that little amplifier, right? And you point the strings right at it, and you pow a string, right? And it starts to feedback. Well, right away, first time that happens, you're going to think something's going bad here, man. Silence it. You're not even sure how to do that. What do? I got to turn my bass away from it, run across the room, unplug. When all you have to really do is turn something down. Okay, but then you thought, wait a minute, what if I could get control over that feedback and use that? In other words, make that part of playing my bass. Well, no, that's not uncommon. But it's something else you're going to discover. So why not use it? Why not use it? Just like, why not use a spoon? What if you have a really high power fan, an air fan? Okay? And it really kicks out some damn air. You crank up your bass, and you just hold the strings right in front of the fan. What might that do? Is that playing the bass? Sort of. I mean, you're getting it to make a sound. No, what if you also now hit a note without touching the other three strings, and they're still vibrating a little from the fan, and you hit a note. Now, are you playing the bass now? Yeah. You also have a background atmosphere sound going on from the fan. Is that part of playing what you're doing? Is that part of you playing the bass right now with that note? Yeah. Damn right it is. Well, now, if you keep getting interested in this, you're going to learn to repeat certain things. You're going to learn to be able to do them again. These sounds, right? You're going to learn how they were done, how you did them. And you're going to be able to create variations of them. So that maybe you just stick with one thing you're doing. One really cool sound, right? It's one note. There's only one note or just one sound. And now you learn how to vary it a little bit. Little variations. It's just because you keep doing this. You're going to figure out, probably by accident, that if you're using your fingers especially, you can get a totally different sound out of that same thing by just holding your finger at a different angle. Or where you strike the string. Like, where on the length of that string do you strike it? Because the pickups make a difference. You know, if you're right over a pickup, you're going to get mostly the sound that that pickup is getting. The other pickup is probably getting a little bit of a different message. And if you're farther away from both of them, it's going to be another thing. You're going to get some of the sound of the actual wood on the fretboard if you're up on the fretboard, because that's going to vibrate right under there more than other areas. Well, no, not necessarily. Well, the string vibrations themselves are going to be bouncing off that neck, that fretboard, and that's going to be it's going to make a difference. My point is, you're going to figure out, either by accident or on purpose, that you can make variations of one thing ongoingly. So maybe you've got this little bit of atmospheric air blowing across your strings, and they're just humming a little bit, right? And now you're playing a note, and you learn that, well, if you bend the string a little bit, well, that changes things. And now, as you're bending the string, you change your finger angle. And when you release the string back to just a straight position, and then you change your finger angle back. And boom. Well, you're not going to find that in a YouTube video, are you? I mean, probably not. You're not going to be taught it in bass lessons. You're not going to learn it in music class at school. And you're not going to hear many other people doing anything like that. Because that's just not playing the bass then, is it? That's just fucking around with effects. Well, that's not the right point of view, is it? And the way you're going about all this, from the starting point that you either actually had or you imagined, okay, and you acted from in the first place, you're going to move in this direction. So now, improvising, just, well, if you know enough of this kind of stuff because you've been just doing it and figuring this stuff out, or having it just happen by accident, but then you can make it intentional, or whether you planned it, you know, like you had a sound in mind, and you did whatever it took to find out how to do that. All of this experimenting, and you now knowing just how to do all of this outside of the standard box from the start because of the way you started and the objectives you had in the first place. We're going to be able to improvise all of these variations and put them together. Now, how do you know how to put them together? Pretty much the same way you figured out your hand positions to do certain things. You're just going to work it out. You're going to know how to make sounds, certain sounds, how to, like what it sounds like, what pitch it is if you press this string on that fret, by familiarity. Okay, the same with all the other stuff that you've been figuring out or just having happen, and then you get familiar with it. Okay, so you start off with some sound. You're going to improvise. You're just going to sit down and you're going to see what happens. But you now are familiar. Your brain now can approach something like this from the point of view, like when you learned how to write that first song, right? You now have an idea of a progression of, well, in that case, that song part, it was a progression from a verse to a chorus, right? A sequence of parts or changes that take place in what you're doing with the bass at the moment. Changes, okay? So you start off, let's say, with the spoon on a certain note, just a certain note, okay? Maybe have a little feedback happening. Okay, so you it's kind of easiest to go 4 beats at a time, like don't switch to some other variation until you've got 4 of the thing you're doing. Like, and now maybe switch to a slight variation of it. Okay, so you got one note going. Ding, and all that. Okay, you got the spin, and you're rocking it back and forth while just scratching a little bit on the string, and you're not changing your finger position at all. Okay, and then you bend the string and do that. Okay, 4 times. Okay, and now on the 5th one, the first beat of the next measure, you drop the spoon and you start doing it with your fingernail. Same thing, except you can't rock your fingernail. But hey, you could rock your finger, like hit it at this angle and then flick back on it with your fingernail. Oh, that's a variation, but it's the same note. Now, while you're doing it, well, now you have 2 things in a row you just did. What's going to sound next? What's going to sound really cool next? What's it want now? Where does this go? Maybe you might know where you want it to go now if you just ask that question, or just figure at the moment, well, if I was hearing somebody else do this, what do I expect they're going to do next? What seems to be the next thing? And maybe you don't know how to get to that next thing, but you work it out. Or you do something different. Or maybe you just come up, your effort to do the thing you kind of like it to do. It doesn't happen, but something else does. So, okay, is that a mistake? Not necessarily. That's up to you. Because maybe that's the next thing the bass wanted to do. Let's just say that, okay? So you now have to adjust your thinking. Okay, this is the next thing that's happening. But somehow I need to make it fit now. You weren't controlling where it went next. The bass was just for lack of a better way to put it. So now it's your turn. Now it's your turn to make that work. So what comes next? It might be something, it's probably going to be something a little different than what would have come next if you had gone to that prior next thing exactly as you had anticipated. But there will be a next thing. And you can get back on track by pursuing another track that way. Is this going to work really well at first? No. No. The more familiar you can get with all the sounds that can be made, your hand positions, the string relationships, where to find a certain pitch on the fretboard, the better you're going to get at this. If this is the way you keep going with it. Eventually, it's going to lead to, if you practice following those 2 rules I said, those 2 rules of thumb, the duration of your practice, getting back to where you left off last time, and then moving forward from there, and emphasizing, practicing the things that you're not so good at. Follow those rules of thumb, and keep doing all of this. The rest, you're going to arrive to a point where you know enough about all of this from your own practice and experience and creativity and experimenting and saying yes to mistakes, and turning them into, it wasn't, you didn't make a mistake kind of thinking, but the bass decided to do this, and it won that time. So now I go with it instead of the bass just goes with my mind, and my mind now goes with it. And you're going to get better at this, and you're going to be more and more capable of doing what's in your head. And what's in your head is not going to be confined to some narrow-minded, inside a little box formula for how it's supposed to be done and what it's supposed to sound like. All the while, you haven't learned anything about chords, you haven't learned anything about arpeggios, you haven't learned anything about scales. You still don't know what pentatonic means. It doesn't matter. You know how to play what it is you want to hear from moment to moment in real time. If you can land on it or figure it out, then if you hear a certain sequence of notes, it might just so happen to be a C minor 7 or something like that. Whatever, right? Do you need to know what that's called if you can play it when you want to? It doesn't matter what it's called or who first invented it or discovered it. It doesn't matter. Yeah, learning these things can help you speed along the process, but they also are going to put you in a box. You figure it out yourself. And don't limit yourself. Don't limit your view of what a bass is supposed to sound like, or what sounds are supposed to be made with it, or how to make them. And then how they're all to be combined. Don't limit yourself. Start fresh with no preconceived notions, as almost as though you never heard anything played with a bass before in your life. That's how to do this. People make videos. The right way to learn to improvise on the bass. Yeah, I say bullshit right away before I even look at it. And I've never found that I thought otherwise once listening to it. You know, in my opinion, I'm telling you the right way to do it. Similarly to playing cover songs is not being creative. Well, learning, yeah, you're creating a sound. You created your skill at playing somebody else's creation. So, okay, give you that one. I'll give you that much. Well, similarly, learning to improvise by the rules, by somebody's rules, scales, formal shit, right? Which keeps you in a little box and gets you to thinking that's all there is. Like, what's on the 6 o'clock news is all there is to know about the world. If it's not on there, well, it ain't happening. Or it's not true. If you're learning improvisation, really pretty much any other way than what I'm saying here, then it's not really improvising. To an extent, I'll give you that. But your improvising is filled with stuff that you're copying from other people. I wouldn't say that's pure improvisation. No. And that's all I have to say. Now I gotta reload, remember? Mm-hmm. So while I do that, I'm not talking to you, honey. I'm making a video still. She was just asleep, and now she started saying, I'm not even looking at her. She's weird, man. Weirdo. Queerdo. I love my wife. She's wonderful. She's a real sweetheart. She sure is. Okay. So while I'm doing this, now's your second chance. See, that'll be your second chance. I'm going to end the video before I do that. So as soon as this video is done, if you didn't do that thing, click on the thumb up icon before, if you didn't subscribe before when I said to do it, if you didn't activate the notification bell feature before, if you didn't write down the donation by PayPal information before, well, now's your chance. 3, 2, 1, act now.